What if I told you that the reason you're still suffering, despite all of your efforts to do better, is because of a hidden program running deep in your subconscious mind? As a hypnotherapist who's helped hundreds of people heal their deepest wounds, I've discovered a core belief that underlies it all: the feeling of utter unworthiness. And in this video, I want to break down how this wound drives your life and what you can do to finally break free. So what exactly is the wound of unworthiness? It's a deeply ingrained belief that you're fundamentally flawed, undeserving of love, success, and happiness. It often stems from childhood experiences where you didn't receive unconditional love and acceptance, the acceptance that you needed so that you can determine that you're worthy. But to be precise, and something that applies to a lot of you here in this channel, this is a core wound that we develop when we come from homes that are narcissistic and highly toxic. This wound, the wound of our worthiness, is the wound that all of us, especially those of us raised by emotionally mature parents, carry. So the environments of toxic and emotionally mature parents, the environments they create in the household, become like the perfect foundation so that we feel unworthy, something that will follow us throughout our lives. Why does that happen? Because narcissistic parents struggle. They don't struggle. They just don't have empathy for their children's feelings and their experience. They will dismiss your emotions are too sensitive, traumatic, leaving you feel very, very invalidated and unseen. When this happens chronically, time after time, you begin to realize that you are not deserving of empathy, which is really, really vital as humans to have others have empathy for our struggles. But you start realizing that you do not deserve empathy and your feelings are too much. So you must not be worthy of those things, which is why they're not given to you. The other thing that happens a lot in these households is that love is often conditional, based on performance or meeting the emotionally mature parents' needs. So you learn from an early age that love is something you must earn. It's not something that you just deserve to get unconditionally. Hence why you come out of these childhoods and these homes and these relational injuries feeling deeply unworthy of love because you have never received it in an unconditional manner, but rather you've received it for the things that you did and how those things benefited your parents. In addition, in these homes, narcissistic parents are relentless with their criticism. They constantly put you down in every single opportunity. And so, of course, this kills your self-esteem and makes you feel perpetually inadequate. And also, in time of being exposed to so much criticism about who you are and not feeling enough, your worth, your sense of worth as a person will diminish. You cannot find any worth, any value in you because you are something or somebody that constantly needs to be fixed. There's always something wrong with you. So you don't really feel worthy. And another thing that I don't know if we talk about it as much as we talk about most of the things that narcissistic parents do, which are, blatant and mean things, is this silent thing that happens, and it's an underlying experience of everybody who feels unworthy, which is the emotional neglect. Because these parents will eventually, these parents will show up and meet some of your basic needs, right? Housing, give you money, whatever. But they will neglect your emotional needs, primarily because they're very uncomfortable with the emotional world of others, and they're only preoccupied with their emotional world. And they act like your emotional world and your needs are a burden. So you don't get support or guidance or nurturing. So these are things they don't do to you per se, but are things that are missing from the experience and are things that you need. So at the end of this, you begin to feel abandoned and unworthy of basic care because you need to be supported. You need to be nurtured. You need to be guided. So these moments of realizing that this is something that I could have had, but I didn't get, are as traumatic as getting something that is painful because the need is there. And when it's not met, we conclude that if we're not getting it, it means we don't deserve it. Generally, the homes of narcissistic parents operate on the principle of if you want something, you must earn it, be it love, acceptance, respect, belonging. So the dynamic of if I need to get something, I have to become somebody who deserves it begins to exist in our mind from a very young age. So we understand that the exchange will always be based on how much we can do in order to prove to somebody that is looking at us that we deserve for them to give us those things. As a hypnotherapist, I see this pattern play out in my clients every single day. They come to me with different problems, right? Anxiety, depression, relationship issues. And most of the people that come to me are usually very stuck in their lives in some area that they can't seem to progress in. And a lot of them come also to me being still trapped in the dynamics with their parents. They're still going back to the parents. They're still trying to prove to their parents that they have the worth that their parents never showed them that they have. And some people will do that primarily in their romantic relationships, and some people will do that with themselves. But a lot of people that I see still try to do that with their parents. Constantly in this toxic dance of trying to get these parents to see a worth that they're not willing to see or validate that exists. Because these parents need you to feel unworthy, because if you had known your worth, you would not be chasing it from anybody, let alone those who abused you. So them seeing you be in this position where you want their recognition, you want their validation, you crave for their love, you're still that little child that they can toss and make fun of and throw around and not appreciate. But this child continues to affirm something to them, that their value, their acceptance, their validation is valuable. So as a consequence, they get to feel worthy. So their false perceiving of worth comes from you chasing their approval, which means automatically that if you feel unworthy, then they will feel more worthy in terms of you trying to gain that worth that you never got from them. So obviously, they don't want to validate that worth, and they will not, because then they will lose this power dynamic that they've been exercising for so long, finding worth through tearing down your own and seeing you beg for their approval and their validation. But as I said before, this type of unworthiness doesn't only play out in the relationships with our parents. The relationships were never resolved, and the compulsion to keep going back to them. But we can see them in our lives, outside of even our parents. And one of the main reasons and the main things that we do is we chase unavailable people. We're drawn to people who are distant, avoidant, or already in a relationship. Like subconsciously, we're trying to prove that we can become worthy of these people if we do enough, right? So we entangle ourselves in these situations thinking, yeah, they don't want me yet, but I'll manage. We have this delusion and this hope that we can turn somebody's feelings around by earning their love, which is, this isn't just romantic or, oh, I just want somebody, I want a woman back. This is the distorted idea that in order for someone to love us, we have to earn their love. We have to do many things and wait and suffer and be in pain because we don't think we just deserve of someone just loving us. And a very common thing that tends to happen in our lives is when people just show up and love us, we're like, what is wrong with you? We look down to people that are actually very generous with their love for us. We're like, I didn't have to earn this. What is going on, right? And this is a lifelong pattern that we do not see. So we perpetuate living in the rejection of people because we're trying to pursue our worth by gaining acceptance and approval and love by people who were previously unavailable to us. But let me tell you something, no matter what we do and however much we try, we can never secure a love we've had to earn. We can't secure anybody's love. Like, life is what it is, and we are what we are, and we can grow out of love for people. But if we have to earn someone's love, then the dynamic is doomed, because we will always have to continue to do whatever it is that we did the first time. We have to keep performing, overgiving, self-abandoning, doing whatever we did in the first time to continue to feel like we're worthy of that love. And so that person finds a reason to continue to give it to us. Then that love is probably going to be an exchange that is very, very familiar and very similar to the exchange you've had with your parents. A very conditional love. Another behavior that is really telling of how unworthy we feel is when we are settling for less in every area of our lives. An uninspiring, underpaid job, being overworked and treated poorly, in our friendships, everywhere. It translates everywhere. So we accept subpar treatment, unfulfilling opportunities, feeling like we can't even think about wanting anything better because we don't really deserve it. And we even try to think positively, like, I'm lucky I have what I have, when you are not really lucky. You could be doing more. And this is something I used to do a lot in my own life. I used to find really, really bad jobs. I finished my education very early on after school. And so I could have dedicated myself to my profession and, cultivated my skills and build on my craft. But for a certain period of my life, I just took really random, horrible jobs that perpetuated that I'm not good enough. So I was too good for those environments, and I could feel that, but I was still in those environments. So I would purposefully put myself in environments where I was not appreciated for who I was. I was asked to be less than, and had I even shown my skills or who I really am, then that created a very hostile environment because I didn't belong there. It was more like, what are you trying to do here? Why are you showing this here, right? So I put myself in a new controlled environment where I wasn't valued for who I am, and I was fought against in the sense that I didn't belong. I didn't belong, and I was unwanted in those environments because they were not my environments. They were not the places that were for me. They were places that I just forced myself to go into and act less than so that I can integrate myself into these dynamics that ended up always very dramatic. Like, it was a lot of drama. But the most important drama was the internal drama of me forcing myself to continue to do these things as if I was punishing myself for something that I had done. But in reality, I was just not allowing myself to own up to my own worth and to understand that I deserve better than being in those environments. And eventually, when I started doing the work that I do now, when I started getting my certification, because I did that parallelly to that, I started getting feeling like, what am I doing here, kind of thing. Like the realizations were more like, why was I doing that to myself? And there was a supposed reason that I was saying that I was doing that. I was saying, I need to clear my head. I need a dumb job so that I don't occupy myself with anybody's business. And I just do an easy job, but then I have brain to study and apply myself to my things, which made sense. But at the same time, my history of doing these jobs for so long and always being tortured in these jobs, I remember I used to work in Spain in this restaurant, and I was put on a split shift for 6 months straight. And I had to walk in and out of work 2 times. And I remember I had blisters on my feet, and I would leave that job and I would cry my way home every single day, as if that job, that horrible job, I was treated so badly. I was a newbie and I was a foreigner. So people were like, yeah, instead of mopping each station, they're like, oh, you mop the whole restaurant. And I would just leave that job so exhausted, so miserable, that I would just cry myself every day on my way home to kind of regulate that misery. And then the next day and the next day and the next day, all because I didn't wake up to the fact that, why am I doing this? I can apply for something better. But I chose that. I kept choosing that. And that drove so many of my own decisions in my life. The fact that I didn't allow myself to consider myself worthy enough to at least give myself the opportunity to try at what I truly want and enjoy, right? So this is really important. And it really leaks everywhere in our lives. Thinking that we're not capable of achieving our dreams and to force ourselves to not even try to achieve those dreams. And not only that, to put ourselves in situations where we're perpetually injured and told and treated like someone unworthy. Oh, I have so much drama, especially that restaurant in Spain was really bad. Although we ate a lot of good food, I have to say. I ate for free, and that was a good plus. And I really enjoyed. Many of my coworkers ended up being really good friends, but it was difficult. And I had like 17 managers on top of my head, and I don't like to be told what to do. So can you imagine where I placed myself? Unbelievable. Anyway, so the other thing that we tend to do when we feel like we are not worthy is with self-neglect. We put our needs in the last of our priorities and everybody else's needs in the top. And we ignore our own physical, emotional, and mental health to accommodate others, or even just because we ignore it. It doesn't matter. So the neglect that we received in our childhood became the neglect through which we are treating ourselves. So we're like, I don't have time for myself. I don't have time to do this. I don't have the energy to do that. I don't have the energy to do the other. But what we're truly saying to ourselves is, my needs don't matter, which means I have no worth. If I had worth, my needs would matter, right? If you think about everybody you love in your life, you would think that you would make time for their needs, right? And for the things that they need to be done, because their needs matter, because they matter, and they deserve for their needs to be met. But many of us raised in neglect have this idea that our needs are a burden. Of course, by how we were treated, that's the only logical conclusion one can come to if we're just stuck in that environment, right? And then we continue to live our lives assuming that. And also we get very good at neglecting our needs for so long that we can live and survive without pursuing these needs to be met. So we lower the standard of what we need to the barest of the minimum so that we can survive, which is a fantastic adaptation when we lived in environments that starved us, right? But coming back to our real life, where we have the opportunity to actually meet some of our needs, we continue to keep that bar so low, so absolutely low, and we treat ourselves so neglectful and in a way where we continue to perpetuate to ourselves, you're not worthy, you're not worthy, you're not worthy. And the last behavior that is very evident, which is another one of my personal core things that I do, is perfectionism. We keep ourselves to impossibly high standards, constantly striving for perfection and fearing that every mistake is like this thing that will reveal that we are inherently flawed for who we are, right? That's the core belief that drives our perfectionism. That and the fact that if we are not perfect, we are worthless. So we continue to feel unworthy, but we try to find our worth through the things that we create. And we want these things to be so perfect so that they can reflect that we are worthy. But it never ends. It never ends. And we expect more and more of ourselves in a way where we're driving ourselves and saying, I definitely do that. And I said this before, that I used to think that I'm not a perfectionist because I was like, I can't be a perfectionist. I've never done anything perfectly in my life. It turns out that's exactly what perfectionism is. To not think that anything you've ever done is good enough. So the painful truth about what we're doing because we feel unworthy, and it's what I see with my clients and what I've been struggling with my entire life, and I caught up to this pattern of years and years doing this to myself, is that everything we do to try and prove our worth is essentially reinforcing the core belief that we don't have our worth. Because it's a vicious cycle. Let's say we chase unavailable people, hoping to finally earn their love and acceptance. Then we settle for less, believing we don't deserve more. We neglect our own needs, thinking that we're unworthy of care. And at the end of the day, we're coming back to the same painful and horrible, but false conclusion that we're fundamentally flawed and we're unworthy. So our entire life, we're trying to find proof for the opposite of what we believe. But what ends up happening by what we're doing is that we keep coming back to that same belief. So the behaviors we use to reach that worth externally are the behaviors that perpetuate the sense of unworthiness within. So that's why we go beyond just recognizing the patterns, right? We have to, I mean, in my own journey, I've had to do so much work in terms of the distortions I had about how worthy I am based on how I was treated. So I've had to do a lot of inner child work. I've had to do a lot of regressing to the past and recollect the parts of me that held on to so many memories and so many experiences that all said the same. You're unworthy, you're flawed, you're not good enough. This was the theme of my entire life. So doing all that work and picking it up from there, then I've had to do also the work of the daily things that I have to do in order to continue to reinforce this new truth, right? Because we go back and we break down those things and we break down those wounds and we heal them and we bring in the new beliefs. But then we have to act on those beliefs so that these beliefs can be new concrete experiences, right? They're not just ideas. They will have to affect everything else in our lives, right? And we have to push through and continue to act based on the new core ideas rather than perpetuating the old ones. Because essentially the sense of worth that we have was directly related to how we were treated, right? And how we were met or not met in our early childhood. So if we were constantly neglected or made to feel we're not good enough, that message became deeply ingrained in our subconscious mind, which is why we have to do the inner child work to access those memories and heal out of them. But ultimately, we can only reclaim our worth by how we treat and view ourselves. So we do the work partly with going back into the past, but then how we treat and act and see ourselves will solidify that for us. Now, how to shift this core belief and start to heal from the inside to then out. So today I'm going to share with you an inner child reconnection process. It's a simple but very powerful two-step practice in which you will, 1, identify the needs that were never met in childhood, and 2, translate those needs, those unmet needs, into tangible promises we can commit to in the present. This way we can combine both the experience of the past being healed, but also reinforcing the new belief into our current life. Now I'm going to guide you through a short visualization exercise to help you reconnect with your inner child and to identify your core needs so that we can do those two important elements that I said before. We can bring together those two elements, healing of the wound and then acting in a way where we are reinforcing the new belief that we've installed. Now, see if you can find a quiet space where you're not disturbed, if you're not in that moment now, but see if you can just take a few deep breaths and close your eyes. Take one breath, deep, relaxing breath. One more. And a third deep breath. Now I want you to picture a child standing before you. They look lost, sad, and neglected. They're carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. Take a moment to really recognize this child, because this child is you, your younger self, carrying the pain of your childhood. What emotions do you notice? What do they need in this moment? Extend your hand toward them. See if you can offer them comfort, acceptance, unconditional love. What do you want to say to them? What promises can you make to protect and care for them? Now slowly bring your awareness back to the present moment. Open your eyes. So for the second part of this process, we need to translate their needs, what they told you that they need, into a tangible promise that you can make to yourself starting today. And to help you maybe further beyond what this child communicated to you, ask yourself, what did I yearn for as a child that I never received? Safety, love, acceptance, a sense of being seen, heard, freedom to express yourself. Take note of what was the most important thing that you yearned for and never received, or the most important thing that this child that you've reconnected with now communicated to you. And then see if you can frame a promise in a way that addresses that unmet need. So for example, if you craved safety, you might promise to create a safe and nurturing space for yourself, free from criticism and judgment, starting by how you treat yourself. Which means the promise is, I will not criticize or judge myself today. I promise that it's going to be hard, but trust me, if I can stand here and tell you that it works, it works. If anybody had heard my inner conversation a few years ago, I don't know, they would probably have to lock me up somewhere because I was a danger to myself. The way I spoke to myself, like the way I hated myself was just it's like now I'm thinking about things and I'm like, wow. And you notice how shift gradually comes when something happens and you didn't berate yourself about it. And I remember one day something had happened and I remember noticing that the way I spoke to myself had nothing to do with, it's your fault, you shouldn't have done that. It was like, oh wow, this happened. Ugh, this feels bad. What do I do? It was more like an action-based voice to kind of like mobilize me toward doing something about it. I don't even remember what it was, but I remember being in the car and thinking, wow, I'm not blaming myself for this? That's interesting. I was like, well, you're too nice. Should I be concerned? But anyway, so make the promise to yourself. And the most important part is now that you need to honor that promise to yourself, right? Don't just make it and then be horrible to yourself and be like, what do you want me to do? You're useless. That's why I treat, like, you're not allowed. You have to honor it. Because if you want to feel like you're worthy, you have to also honor the promises that you make to yourself. Now, that is something that we all fall very short of doing. And it's not that we can't stay committed to something, because most of us has remained committed to self-torture, to self-hatred, to self-criticism, to self-abandoning, to self-destruction. We are really committed to that, which means we have no issue committing. We just have issue committing to the right thing, to the good thing. Right, so this is the process. You identify the needs, and then you make a promise that meets those needs, and then you follow through to that promise. Because as I said in the beginning, we first know we're worthy by how we're treated. We then pursue our worth by how others will view us. But ultimately, we can only reclaim our worth by how we treat and view ourselves. Reparenting is a journey of growth. It takes time, patience, presence, and a whole lot of compassion. So make that promise and keep it every single day, no matter how much you want to go back to your old ways. You do it every day until treating yourself like someone who is worthy becomes a second nature to you, and you begin to truly and viscerally experience your inherent worth, the worth you weren't shown, but you have now finally reclaimed for yourself. By the way, I know that healing childhood trauma is by no means easy, but I've made it simple for you. If you're ready for a journey that takes you through your childhood wounds and reparents you back to growth, check out Heal. my foundational phase 1 program with 21 days of transformative hypnotic journeys. And I'll see you guys soon.